You are listening to the Maple Footy Podcast. This is the unofficial football podcast of the North. I'm your host, Sam Little. Find me at official Sam Little on Instagram. There's nothing left to say except for sit back, enjoy, and welcome to the show.
Hello, yes, welcome back to the Maple Footy Podcast. And I'm not even going to waste any time with this one. I am so excited to get into this one because I am doing a 2024 wrap of Canadian football for the year of 2024, obviously. And I'm extremely excited about this because as you know, probably, I love getting to talk about in depth our football here in Canada, and nothing excites me more on this podcast than doing that. So I prepared like a bunch of notes for this. Let me just read out 11 pages, 5,618 words. So I have a lot to say on the matter. So let's kind of get to it. And as we get started, I was making these lists, these notes, all that fun stuff, and I realized that I had been lacking with the women's side of the program, so I wanted to really start this off, give them their attention, give them their flowers, and let me just discuss a couple of things here. Our top players of the year for the women's program, I've got a list of a few. Vanessa Gilles, rightfully named our Women's Player of the Year, as I kind of said back when she was given the award. She had a great season with her club, Lyon in France. She got into the final 8 of the Champions League and is currently on top of the league as we speak. Showed up big for Canada in the Olympics, of course, as we kind of all know. We were watching, apparently, Christine St. Clair reincarnated with just the goal scoring form that she found herself in. It was great. She really helped fill our nation with pride, I think, from a footballing aspect, when we really felt at an all-time low, I would say. Her and all of the girls, of course, but just because she felt like the face of the team at the time with how good she was performing, like, it was hard to not want to see her and our team do well, given all the outside circumstances that we are all well aware of. Olivia Smith, Canada Women's Young Player of the Year and the best young player at the Gold Cup, signed with Liverpool from Sporting Lisbon in July, became the first ever woman to score a goal for Liverpool at Anfield. So, couple bits of history there, of course, and I think her career is only going up from here. Knock on wood, injuries stay away, please, because we live in a time where we have to say that with our young players. So I really do hope that her career trajectory continues to go on the up. Adriana Leon, top goal scorer at the Gold Cup, 6 goals and named into the tournament's best 11, has become a mainstay in the women's team. Always goes out there and gives it her all, does not stop running. I don't think she gets tired. Plays for Aston Villa right now, 7th in the Women's Super League, essentially the Women's Premier League. And it's, once again, just one of those exciting players that you want to watch. You want her on the ball. And even when she's not on the ball, she's trying to make things happen, always pressing, always working hard, leaves it all, plays for the badge every single time. And finally, of course, have to mention her, Jessie Fleming. She left Chelsea for the Portland Timbers in the NWSL, has played 26 matches and recorded 1 assist, finished 6th in the league, and of course we're knocked out of the quarterfinals in the NWSL Championship, but she herself has had a very good season. She became the captain of the women's national team ahead of the Gold Cup. Canada reached the Gold Cup semifinals before losing to the friggin' United States on penalties, but Fleming was named into the best 11. Also provided a massive goal against France in the Olympics when we needed her most. She stepped up. And yeah, I think it's just a testament once again to how good these girls are. When we need them, they step up. They put in class performances. And of course, like I said, all the outside factors going on at the time, it makes it even nicer when they did step up in those moments. And then speaking of moments, let's talk about some big moments for the program. So, of course, Desiree Scott has decided to hang up her boots. She was a vital part of the women's national team for the better part of a decade, I think probably even more than that. Two-time Olympic bronze medalist, and, of course, a well-deserved gold medal, a career deserving of a gold medal, played in the NWSL since its debut in 2013 and finishes her career at Kansas City Current. So I did meet her as well. Seems like a great person, and she was a phenomenal player. They called her the Destroyer, and she was just such a general in the middle of the park. The Olympic results, of course, not what we were expecting the Olympic journey to be, of course, but with those circumstances, the team showed so much heart and so much pride in those games. They never gave up, made it through from the group stages after a 6-point deduction. Would have finished on 9 points if not for the point deduction. They were perfect in the group stage. And of course, finally, the biggest moment, I would say, probably in Canadian football this year, Christine Sinclair has retired from club football. She had, of course, I believe the year prior, retired from the national team, and she retires with Portland Timbers as a 3-time NWSL champion, 2-time NWSL Shield winner, goes down as the best, I'm not even leaving this one up to opinion, the best, factually, to ever lace them up on the women's side of the game and for Canada, men or women. What she did for this program, what she did for the sport in this country will never, you can't put it into words what she has done for this program. Just such a great bearer of the game. And it is a shame that we won't be seeing Christine Sinclair on our screens as a player anymore, but her legacy is second to none, and she retires with, of course, a gold medal, 2 bronze, and I think everybody will always remember that hat trick against the States. Of course, her finally getting the gold medal and all those championships that she won at Portland. So just congratulations on the amazing career for Christine Sinclair. And with all this being said, let's kind of get into our 2024 breakdown. We're talking even more Canadian footy. It's all pro. It's all Canadian. If it's eligible, it will be discussed. CPL, MLS, our boys abroad, and everything in between. And let me kind of tell you how it's going to be discussed. So we're going to move down the list from youngsters of the year, breakout stars of the year, surprises of the year, transfers of the year, coaches of the year, match of the year, moment of the year, player of the year, what we think we should leave in 2024, what we should bring into 2025, and what to look forward to in 2025. And yeah, I did say like things singularly and plurally. There is plural for, I think, every single category here. So match of the year is actually matches. Moment is actually moments. But yeah, we have a lot to discuss. So let's discuss it. So youngsters of the year, I have listed off a good few. So let's just get right into it. Kwesi Poku, the former Forge man and currently doing well in Belgium with RVDM, the left-back turned striker this past year, put the CPL on notice, and it seems Belgium on notice as well. He got 8 goals in the CPL along with 2 assists, then another 2 goals in the Canadian Championship against both Montreal and TFC. I would say not bad for a guy that was playing fullback at that time a year prior. Now he's doing extremely well in Belgium, being deployed both as a striker and more often than not actually a right winger. 3 goals to his name already. He won the CPL U21 of the year, which in my opinion was extremely well deserved. And I think his crowning moment of the year is him making his official Canada debut against Panama at BMO Field. Well deserved. Another CPL alum that ends up stepping foot onto the pitch for Canada. It just shows how good this league is doing, and it shows how good Kwesi Poku's year has been. I've loved watching him really evolve as a player over these last few years, and like I said, turned into a striker this year and hasn't missed a beat, has actually shown that he's even better as a striker than he was as a fullback. So hoping for a real big 2025 from him. Next up is another CPL boy, goalkeeper Emil Gazdov, who was up for the CPL U21 of the year. Yes, of course, he didn't win, but it shows the season he had. He didn't leave empty-handed on the awards night, though, as he was the goalkeeper of the year in the CPL. He played in 24 games in all competitions this past year and kept 10 clean sheets in a less than stellar Pacific side. Yeah, I think that shows the quality that this guy has. A major reason why they even made it into the qualifying rounds of the CPL playoffs, it's because of his heroics. And if you don't believe how good he was, if you're not taking my word for it, let's talk to the 3 MLS sides that are currently linked with him, and a club in Portugal, and a club in the Bundesliga. We could have another top goalkeeper on our hands, and what a year he had. If those moves do go through, I wish him nothing but the best, and if they don't, I'm sure that those moves will come his way eventually if he has another season like he had this past one. Last on my CPL list is Shola Jima. I sang his praises earlier this year with his big-time performance against Atletico Ottawa in the CPL playoffs, off the bench, grabbing himself a goal and an assist to bring his team to penalties. He played 16 times in all competitions. Fitting because he is 16 years old. Yeah, he could be extremely good for Canada and CPL, and who knows wherever else he goes in years to come. But yeah, I think we're only seeing the start of him, and I really, really do hope that he has a bright future ahead of him. After him, I'm going with Steven Afrifra, Toronto-born, plays for Kansas City in the MLS. He's 23, which to me is still a youngster. He enjoyed a breakout campaign, in my opinion, with the side as well, featuring in 34 matches in all competitions, helping himself to 6 goals and creating 4 as well. He played majority as a left winger, but found himself on the right as well. He earned his first 2 caps for the national team in September against the States in that historic win, and Mexico. I am looking forward to what he can do in this coming year. After him, I got Nico Sigur, who could have been Croatian, but decided the Canadian-born boy wanted to play for the Canadians. Fitting, I would say. He has quickly earned his first 2 caps for the country. He's a bit of a Swiss Army knife player, being able to play as a defensive midfielder as well as a right back, which is where he's played both of his matches for Les Rouges, of course. So far this season, he's already got himself 3 goals, which isn't bad when you're a defensive midfielder. Big things, I think, are expected of him, and I think it's going to continue to be a big year ahead, as he is still, of course, playing his season. But yeah, he's quite good, guys, and I do think that, kind of like a good few guys on this list, his future could be massive for us. Moving up to Ishmael Kone, it wouldn't be a Young Player of the Year list for Canada if he wasn't mentioned. The 2022 and 23 Young Player of the Year finds himself on this list, and it was, of course, a big old year for Ishmael Kone. He started the year with Watford and ends it with Marseille, and is currently linked with Lazio. He's found his playing time in France not up to what we would have probably hoped, and I'm sure he would have hoped, but speaking of France, internationally, he did great against France in those friendlies before the Copa America, and I think that's where he really started to put the world on notice, and then, of course, was a top performer at the Copa America, converting a massive penalty for us, scored a great goal against Uruguay where he once again ran the show. So yeah, Watford fans, Canadian fans, yeah, we knew how good he was. So we'll see if Marseille realizes how good he is or not. If not, I don't think Lazio is the worst destination in the world for him. Playing under Maurizio Sarri, I think, could actually do wonders for him. But regardless, wherever he does go, he does need to play. And last, but most certainly not least, is Nathan Saliba. He was officially named Canada's Young Player of the Year just last month, and in my opinion, was fully deserved. Some past winners of the award are, of course, Kone twice, Tejan Buchanan, Derek Cornelius, Daniil Henry, and Ashton Morgan, who all went on to have pretty good careers, if you ask me. He's played a pivotal role for Montreal this season as he helped them get into the MLS playoffs and captained them on a good few occasions. Not bad for a 20-year-old. He plays the game like a younger and more agile Samuel Piette, in my opinion, and I mean that as a great compliment because I'm a big Piette fan. He earned himself his first 2 very well-deserved caps for the national team, and one can definitely believe, I think, that there's more on the way. I'm really excited for what 2025 brings for him, because what a player we could have on our hands. And I've said it before, and I will say it again, he is the best Saliba in world football. So let's move into our breakout stars of the year. And the players I've selected here are kind of more so in terms of national team boys, who may not have made like their official debuts for us, but definitely I think really put us on notice this year, if that makes sense. I'm sure it will kind of as this list kind of pans out. So first, we do have Jacob Schaffelberg. Some would say he's been our best player this year, and there's probably a case to be made for that, really. He is the maritime Messi, really given the reins for both club and country this year. Firstly, he bagged a brace against Messi's Inter Miami in the CONCACAF Champions Cup. There was a point where he was 12th biggest short seller in the MLS as well. So to get to that level is pretty good. I do think to get to the next level for club-wise, he has to replicate what he does for the national team for his club consistently. And speaking, of course, of Canada, he was trusted by Jesse Marsch in the Copa America, and Schaffelberg definitely rewarded that trust as he grabbed an assist against Peru and a goal against Venezuela. He grabbed a goal against the States as well in a historic win. He is a very exciting player, I think, to watch. He's just pure chaos on the pitch, and I mean that in a good way. You just don't know what you're going to get. He's so unpredictable. And yeah, like I said, I do think that he could be a massive player for us, and he could find himself getting potentially a club move, like I said, if he kind of works on that consistency, I think, but definitely feels like it was a breakout year for Jacob Schaffelberg. Moise Bombito is next, the fastest man in Europe's top 5 leagues, and that feels right given how fast his rise has felt this year. And it's been a great rise that he's enjoyed really over the last 18 months, but definitely this past calendar year as well. He had a great season with Colorado, which earned him a call to the MLS All-Stars. He was one of Canada's best players in the Copa and was our Iron Man. He played every single minute. He has shown the makings to be a true top center back in the world. If you listen to Jesse Marsch as well, he'll tell you how good Bombito is, one of the most naturally gifted center backs he's ever coached, which is saying a lot since he has coached guys that are currently playing on top sides like Konate, Upamecano. So that does say a lot in my opinion. Following our great Copa run, Bombito got himself a move to Nice, where he hasn't slowed down yet. He's been a rock at the back, starting almost every game for them this season, and has only lost once as they sit 6th. Could be a big 2025 ahead for our number 15 and Nice's number 64. But yes, it was definitely a breakout year for Moise Bombito. Moving on after Bombito, Mathieu Chouanière got his long-anticipated move away from Montreal, a club that we know means so much to him, but he did want to move on, wanted to take a challenge in Europe, I think, and he decided on Grasshoppers in Switzerland, a historic club for the Swiss. He's getting some good playing time there as well. Towards the end of the year, kind of found himself on the fringes of the squad, but is back now training with them, so hopefully that is indicative of good things to come. And I think he really stepped up for Canada in Kone's absence and has looked really good whenever he's been asked to step in, say for Ishmael Kone or, whoever he's had to step in for. I think his performance against Uruguay in the Copa America I thought was quite good and showed us how good he can be. And since then, he's only showed us how good he can be. And my last one on the breakouts is Ali Ahmed, another one who stepped up brilliantly when asked, I think. He had a great season with the Whitecaps, picking up their 3rd Canadian championship in a row and his 2nd. He's attracted a lot of attention from clubs in Europe, Ligue 1, Bundesliga, and England, to name a few. We could see a big year coming up for him, and like I said, he stepped in big with the absence of, say, Tajon Buchanan, and he really looked like he was up for the occasion. A really entertaining player to watch, not afraid to take guys on, can create a lot of chances. I think of that Panama assist that he got for Kyle Larin as quite a good one. But yeah, no, he's could have a very big 2025 coming up, and we'll have to wait and see. Let's keep the train rolling and let's move into surprise of the year. And there was a good couple surprises this year. Jesse Marsch, for one. I think a lot of people were surprised that Canada chose Jesse Marsch for such a big year ahead and such a massive time in our program's history, I think. And many people were even more surprised that he was actually very good for us and for the boys. I, for one, wasn't fully enamored with the arrival of Jesse Marsch, but wasn't also like, I hate this. I was kind of like lukewarm on it, kind of like, oh, okay. But even I will hold my hands up. He well exceeded my expectations, and I hope that he continues to do so because, yeah, look at the players he's improved. I think many of us will think fondly about that stretch of friendlies into the Copa from June to July, I think, where he really brought a sense of belief into the players that we hadn't seen in quite some time. I think towards the end of Herdman's tenure, it really felt like that belief and brotherhood was kind of, I don't want to say disappeared, but wasn't as strong as it was at certain points. And I was extremely pleasantly surprised by Jesse Marsch and how quickly he kind of turned this around, gave a lot of guys opportunities. And I think guys like Bombito, Cornelius, Theo Bear, Tani Oluwaseyi, and so on, will be extremely thankful for the arrival of Jesse Marsch because it helped them both internationally and at club level. Like Derek Cornelius, Moise Bombito getting such massive moves, I think can in part be thanked with Jesse Marsch trusting them and giving them the keys to really exceed. And I, for one, am extremely excited to see what he can do with this program heading into this big year ahead for us with both the CONCACAF Nations League, Gold Cup, and of course the World Cup in 2026. And speaking of those kind of competitions, talk about the big competition that we were in, the Copa America. It was a great run. We were placed into a very hard group with the defending champs Argentina, Chile, and Peru. But with talent and hard work, our boys made it through, and we didn't not look the part. We looked like we could be there. We lost to Argentina in that first game, but I think that's where we started to rear a lot of heads. And we really showed that, okay, wait, maybe this isn't the easy 3 points that a lot of people potentially thought it was going to be. Because I still think, in my heart of hearts, I do think that we could have actually have won that game had we converted some chances. Then we beat a hard Peru side who was difficult to beat, and we stepped up, especially Schaffelberg and David linking up on that great goal. And then the Chile game, we must not lose to go through. And what do? We go out there, do the dirty work, do the hard work, and we draw 0-0 against guys that were champs 8 years before. So not like they're slouches either. And then we go and we beat Venezuela on penalties, which was a very nervy night, I will say that much. And then we face Argentina again, sadly, come up short, and then we lose to Uruguay in the third place game, which a game I still think could have gone either way. It was such a back and forth night. Both teams looked really up for it, and regardless of where we finished, I think people remember how we did and the hard work that the boys put in. They put the world fully on notice, I think, of it's not just you're going to play Canada, you're going to get an easy win. I think not saying we could beat any team in the world or nothing like that, but I do think that we put up a game against any team in the world. We went to the defending Copa America champs, World Cup champs, and yes, we did lose, but it wasn't like, oh man, that was horrific. Like, it was a competitive match. I think we give any team a run for their money, genuinely. And if you want to hear some more in-depth thoughts about us in this tournament, I have an entire playlist dedicated to our just Canadian episodes. So definitely go check that out if you want to relive the magic of that. And my last one is, of course, our Olympic campaign. Covered in controversy, of course, with all the DroneGate stuff. And Bev Priestman, of course, thank you so much for that, by the way. Our girls, in my opinion, I think did us proud. Deducted 6 points after winning the first game, so put them on -3 going into the next two. Diana Matheson with probably one of my favorite tweets of all time, just saying, I think she wrote out more than this, obviously, but the best part of it was, take 6 from us, fine, we'll get 9, and then they did. They did in fact do that. Like, that's cold. But it was great because I think that it showed that put anything in their way and like they can do something. Yes, of course, they go out on penalties to Germany right out of the group stages, but still I think it's still a very respectable campaign, especially with everything that was going on around them. Like I said, going perfect in the group stage, and those heroics from Jill and Fleming against both France and Colombia, it's crazy. You know, it gets us into the knockout stage. I think our girls did us proud. You can say it was a disappointment because there was no medals, all that stuff. But with everything that happened, and I think everything that's still kind of coming out about Bev and John Herdman and the drones and just everything surrounding that, because now it's evolved to so much more than just drones. Yeah, I think it just kind of shows the character that these girls have, and regardless of if they got a medal or not, I think it's definitely still determined that they could hold their heads up high, I think. But moving now down into transfer of the year, and I've already talked a bit about him, so let's start with Moise Bombito. We know how good he can be and how big this could be for his career. I think it's a massive step forward in his career, so we're kind of going to brush past him. I don't want to brush past him but I did already kind of talk about him in depth a good amount, and there are some other players I would like to talk about. So Derek Cornelius to Marseille from Malmo. He had a great season with Malmo, but I'm not sure many would have predicted the summer he was going to have. He did the League and Cup double there as well, by the way. He was linked with some moves before the Copa, but his outstanding performances at the Copa and friendlies beforehand had earned him a move to the French Giants, and truly, I think it's a massive move for him. For a guy who was struggling for playing time at the Whitecaps and then went on loan, then came back, then finally goes to Malmo on loan, permanently, to really properly get a lot of games under his legs, and he just shows how good he is there. And then, like I said, given the reins, which just internationally speaking, he wasn't getting the reins for so long. It always felt like he was kind of being teased with he might be able to start, he might not, maybe now's going to be the time we're going to use him, maybe it won't be. But then, of course, Jesse Marsch comes in, Derek Cornelius becomes one of our two starting center backs, and he hasn't looked back since. I think he was phenomenal at the Copa America. Like, genuinely, I think he was superb, one of the best defenders in that entire tournament, and I wholeheartedly stand by that. He was phenomenal. And then you, of course, get the move to Marseille, where he was starting a lot of games before his injury, and since his injury he's kind of had to work his way back into the starting 11. Just started a match over the weekend for them, so hopefully that is more to come of that. But yeah, what a year he had. I think definitely one of the more underrated players on our national team, I would say. But moving on from him, let's talk about, you knew it was coming, Liam Miller to Hull City. The Maple Footy podcast is, of course, the home of the Liam Miller Hive, so I had to mention this. He had a great season on loan at Preston from Basel, which led him into the Copa America, and it didn't seem like he would be in the plans for Basel coming into the 24-25 season, but the Copa and his great season with Preston earned him a move to Hull City. While, of course, sadly, his season is over due to, of course, an ACL injury. Thank you, injuries. I'll never love you. I hate them. But it doesn't mean he wasn't playing the best football of his career before the injury. Liam Miller, of course, while he was in the side, they were closer to promotion. Now that he's out of the side, they're closer to relegation, which is a shame because, I would have loved to have seen Liam Miller potentially being on a squad that could be pushing for Premier League status, if not getting it. But he had a goal and 2 assists in that time before he was injured, and there was a point where he was creating nearly one big chance per 90 in the championship, which was at that time the most of anybody in the league. So that kind of just shows you how good and influential he was being. It's a shame, like I said, his season was cut short, but we will remain the Liam Miller Hive here, and once he's back, I'm sure he'll be better than ever. It's just such a shame that he gets struck down with an injury right when he's playing the best that he ever has. And last up is Tajon Buchanan to Inter Milan. Well, yes, he has struggled for minutes since going to the Italian Giants. He finished 2024 strong, I would say, and he has definitely had his moments. This is a massive move, I think, just in general for Canadian football. He's the first Canadian player to ever play in the Serie A and win the league as well and the Super Copa. In my opinion, he needs to start playing more, but this move really does put him on the map. If he doesn't get more minutes, it could be time to leave the club at the end of the season. In my opinion, just saying, but I do think there would be a number of suitors. He's truly one of the best, in my opinion, that we have in the program, playing for one of the best teams and biggest clubs in the world. So yeah, potentially should be playing more. We would hope he'd be playing more, but still, I do think that it's still just such a massive move that I do have to put it in here, because who would have thought that Tajon Buchanan, when he was playing for the Revs in the MLS, that he would one day be lining up for Serie A champs. That's pretty massive if you ask me. So yes, I do want him to play more and think for his career and for his play, he needs to play more. So like I said, if say come the end of the season, it's not looking like he's going to be playing, I do think it will be time to say reassess his career with Inter Milan. But hopefully that would mean he'd go somewhere and play consistently at the top level. And let's get into Coach of the Year. So for me, there was two coaches that stood above the rest in Canadian football this year, and one of them's not even Canadian. You knew, of course, we'd have to talk about him. It is Jesse Marsch. I already have talked about him a little bit, but he's American, and he's kind of taken Canadian football, I would say, and we've kind of really taken to him, I think, especially when he did, in fact, beat America on American soil. He had a great year. Let's be honest. He's making history, giving so many guys a chance, and I really just think that he brought a special vibe back to our national team, one that, like I said, felt like it was kind of dying out towards the end of Herdman's tenure and hadn't really been fully reignited until Jesse Marsch really came in, made some tweaks, brought in some players, giving them a chance, and they haven't let him down, I don't think. I do want to also give a special shout out to Mauro Biello, who was the interim coach in between Herdman and Marsch, and he was the guy that was in charge when we qualified for the Copa America. So this great year potentially doesn't happen without Mauro Biello. So I did want to give him a special shout out. And my other pick is, of course, Forge FC's own Bobby Simeonis. He's been a staple of the CPL, building a dynasty. And while the season ended not the greatest, as I think games and travel, caught up to Forge towards the end there, it doesn't take away from the season that I think they had, which of course was spearheaded by Bobby. He led Forge to the league title, the second time in the club's history, but the first one that is acknowledged by the league, so technically really only the first, but they finished first twice, okay? And they started the season against Chivas in the CONCACAF Champions Cup. They put up a good fight in both legs. Of course, they produced some memorable moments in the Canadian Championship as well, drawing Montreal at Tim Hortons Field and then beating Montreal in Montreal. They beat TFC at Tim Hortons Field and then came up just short at BMO, where they lost 1-0 and were eliminated on not even goal difference on the away goal rule, one of the only competitions I can think of that still implements that rule. So it is a shame. I've talked in depth about that one, how I wasn't too pleased about that overall, just because, maybe TFC controversially got a goal at Tim Hortons Field that then led them to beating Forge. But, we'll move past that. He, of course, then finally won his long overdue Manager of the Year award on the sixth time of asking, and let's be real, he probably could have won that award probably all 6 seasons that he's been in the CPL, so it's astonishing to me that this is only his first one. But he definitely deserved it, and his future may be a little bit up in the air now with TFC coachless, and his name has been floated around a little bit, so we'll see what happens there. If that offer does come in, I would kind of figure that Bobby will probably leave Forge just because TFC they are a bigger club and a bigger prospect there. Of course, not great at the moment, but it would be hard for him to say no, I think. But regardless, it doesn't change the 2024 he had with Forge. He was great for them, as he always is. He just gets it. You just see managers and coaches that just get it. He just gets it. He knows how to win. Like I said, he's built this dynasty and now is currently, potentially, maybe, a contender for the TFC job. So we'll see what happens there. And let's move into match of the year. There were some great matches, and I've selected 5 for you to maybe go watch some highlights or to who knows, watch them all. Who knows? But I've selected that I did want to discuss just a little bit. Firstly, of course, some CPL action. You knew I had to say some of it. Atletico Ottawa versus York United, potentially one of the best CPL matches in the league's short history. This game, I think, had it all, with managers famously going at it beforehand. I loved the fact that that was happening, because it just made this feel like such a big occasion. You could tell that the managers both, after what had been said, really wanted to beat each other. And I think both teams felt that, and you could see it in the style of play that they were playing. There was an Olympico from Ollie Bassett in what would be his last goal for the club, a 94th minute equalizer from, of course, Shola Jima to bring the game to extra time, a penalty kicked off extra time, and then immediately Mobabuli equalized again for York. The game went to penalties, where even then there was some controversy, as the only missed penalty from Babuli saw the keeper well off of his line. But in the end, what a match it was. If you want to hear my full thoughts on it, I did do kind of, as I mentioned about the Copa CPL playoffs, and this game, of course, was covered. It was a phenomenal game, real end-to-end stuff, and it was, in my opinion, such a great advert for the league. If someone happened to really not follow the CPL and just turn this on because it was the playoffs, I would hope that maybe they have continued to watch the CPL and will be continuing going into the 2025 season, because this was a great game, and like I said, just such a great advertisement for the CPL. Next up, Forge FC versus TFC 2-1, and I could be a little bit biased here, as I was at Tim Hortons Field for this one, but it was a great match, and one where Forge really showed their quality. For most of it, they played TFC off the pitch, and Forge was probably unlucky not to have won this one by 3 or 4. A couple of nice saves from Garavan on the night, and also Forge hitting the TFC woodwork twice made sure it was only 2-1. Badibanga scoring from halfway, and a Poku back heel were some of Forge's goals of the season as well, in my opinion. Plus TFC having a bit of a controversial goal off of a questionable call all came back to sadly bite Forge on aggregate in the second leg. I do wholeheartedly believe, by the way, that if Forge did make it past TFC here, I honestly believe that they would have been the Whitecaps in that final. It just really felt like having, at that point, if they had gone through, would have beaten Montreal and TFC. It felt like they were like the MLS hunters, they wanted the scalps of the MLS Canadian teams. And, like I said, they showed that they could hang. It showed that the CPL, quality-wise, I don't think is much different in comparison to the Canadian MLS teams, at least. So that's no slight on TFC either, by the way. I think it's great for the Canadian game that we can sit here and say that we have 11 pro teams, both between the CPL and the MLS, and we can watch these games in the Canadian Championship and go, okay, wow, these CPL boys, they're hanging here. And it's in my opinion, it's only good for the game here. I do hope that we do get to see TFC and Forge again in the competition face off this coming year, because those games always seem to provide just great entertainment and great back and forth. The sides just seem to really match up well together. So we'll kind of see what happens in the 2025 edition of the Canadian Championship. Fingers crossed that maybe a CPL team, Forge, wins it, because they seem to be the first to do everything. So let them be the first CPL team to win this too. But yes, we'll move away from CPL. We'll move into our national team. And first we'll move into Canada versus France. And no, not Canada 0-0 against France in that friendly. I'm talking about Canada and France at the Olympic Games. It was a good year for Canada and France. We have 5 guys now playing in Ligue 1. As I mentioned, the 0-0 draw. But this, to me, was the moment against France in general between Canada. It was a must-win game for our girls, having, been deducted all those points. They needed a win to even remotely stay alive going into the third group game, as this was, of course, the second one. It was a very good night, I think. In a must-win game, they stepped up. Jesse Fleming gets a great goal in the second half. Then all hope seemed lost as they were heading towards a 1-1 draw. But in the 12th minute of stoppage time in the second half, who would you bet on scoring a massive goal? Would it be your center back? I guess so, because Vanessa Jill decided to just go, yeah, you know what? I got this. And she put the nation on her back and scores, like I said, the 12th minute of stoppage time to keep their knockout hopes alive. And of course, we know how the story goes after that. They end up getting into the knockout stages, and of course it doesn't end the way we wanted it to, but this felt like an iconic moment for our women's program. It once again showed that put the backs against the wall, our girls will always come out swinging and they will do us proud. Like I said, you can say what you want, all that stuff. I honestly don't care, because this was a great game for our girls and one of the matches of the year, in my opinion. They did us so proud, and I'm not going to let anyone tell you otherwise. And you knew this one was coming, Canada versus Venezuela. I mean, it had to be here, Quarterfinals of the Copa America, the country was watching the boys fresh off a freak injury to Tajon Buchanan in training, and our boys had to step up. It felt like a big fight feel, you know what I mean? And step up they did. It was a frantic back and forth game for both sides. Schaffelberg and David linked up for our goal, but then in the second half, Crepeau was caught off his line and chipped from the halfway line-ish. It was a great game, though, and then it went to penalties. Venezuela scored first. David coolly dispatches his. Venezuela missed. Liam Miller put his over. Venezuela scored again. Bombito stepped up and rolled his in. Crepeau did what he does and saved against Venezuela, only for Eustachio to miss right after that. Venezuela scored again, and then with the weight of the nation on his shoulders, as he so often does, Alphonso Davies performs under pressure, scores a penalty to put it into sudden death. Crepeau, right out the gate, saves another one, and then Kone, who was brought on just 10 minutes before, converts to send us into the semis. It was honestly probably the best feeling I've had watching a team I support, and probably the most intense shootout I've had to watch for a team that I support. But what a result it was. As I've kind of harped on, it shows that we could perform. This is one of the biggest international competitions in the world, and our boys made it to the semifinals through an extremely competitive game against a rather tough side. It was moments like that where I think that Jesse Marsh had really helped to win over his doubters, because that's not an easy setting to go and perform in, and it's not an easy team to perform against, and our boys have never been really there. Yes, they've been in the Gold Cup, not the Gold Cup, sorry, the CONCACAF Nations League final. They've been in semifinals of the Gold Cup, but to me, the Copa America is a different beast. It's, you're playing against the South American sides, who are known to be rather relentless and sometimes rather hard. And here you kind of showed we can perform as you did in the group stages, and then you get the result that you deserve. And it was just such a good night and such a good feeling. And I really, really do hope that we can replicate that in the CONCACAF Nations League and the Gold Cup this coming March and then summer. So with that being said, we'll move into moments of the year. As I've already mentioned, some of these throughout, I'll kind of rapid fire some great moments in Canadian footy in 2024. Firstly, of course, Sholajima, as I've kind of talked about him a few times this episode, stepped up big for York against Ottawa, 16 years old, and what was the club's biggest game of the season. He stepped up massively, and I just hope that he continues to develop well in the CPL with York, and then we can start talking about his future in a couple of years. He is just 16, so let's not rush nothing, you know what I mean? Then, of course, Forge beat Montreal and TFC. They proved to be the MLS hunters, as I kind of mentioned before, showing the CPL boys can hang. They made it to the final in 2020, and if they keep it up, I think that they could be the first CPL team to win the competition in the next couple of years. Maybe this is the year. I would hope so. Sticking with Forge, they are then called the league winners. It's their second time finishing first in the league, but the first time they've officially been called league winners. The first time the league didn't recognize it, but now the league does recognize league winners, so we can say that they are officially league winners. And it's nice to see that they get their flowers. They have, as I've said, been a dynasty, have now won a trophy every year of their existence. I guess technically in 2021 they didn't, because they didn't they finished first but didn't get the trophy. But yeah, so almost every single year of their existence have won a trophy, and it just shows that this dynasty that they've built in the CPL. And sticking with the CPL, Cavalry beats their postseason demons. It was their third time in the final, and finally they did get the medal, shaking their postseason demons, and proven they are champs. They had teased greatness so many times. Like Forge, have won the league a couple of times now. Won it last year by a good margin and couldn't replicate that in the final. And then the inaugural season, they won the fall and spring season. That was when it was played, fall and spring season. It's changed now. But yeah, stick with me. They went to the final that year as well, but of course lost to Forge. And then this year, they finally did prove that they had it in them. They won the North Star Cup, becoming the third team in the history of the league to win said cup. And it was a big moment. I think everything that Cavalry had worked for 6 years finally came to fruition. They got the big one. And of course it does come at the expense of Forge, but we won't talk about that. And then, as we've talked about the Copa so much, Canada qualify for the Copa, and then Canada advance in the Copa. Both the draw against Chile and Venezuela, you could say, are great moments for them. The win against Trinidad to get them into the Copa, really just essentially anything around the Copa. Yeah, I've talked this one to death, but what a run it was. Some of my favorite moments supporting any team. Then Diana Matheson tweets, "Take 6 from us, fine, we'll go and get 9. And then the girls do. Gilles heroics against France. It was just ice cold. Shame, like I said, that the biggest talking point from the Olympics is the controversy of Drone Gate, but let's look at the positives here. What the girls did in those group stages was some of the best that we've seen them do. Probably since that gold medal win. I think it's probably, I would say, the best that they've performed since that gold medal win. And then some individual moments here. Davies' goal against Madrid. Canadians stepping up in the Bernabeu. Yeah, against the club that's trying to actively sign you in a Champions League semifinal. Hey, so that's pretty big, actually. And then Jonathan David proved to be both Madrid's worst nightmare. He ended Real Madrid's undefeated streak. I think it was I can't remember the stretch of games it was. I know I mentioned it on a past podcast. But yeah, ended their stretch of games with a cool penalty. And then beats Atletico as well. Gets a brace off the bench against Atletico Madrid. Yeah, he's proven to be the real deal, guys. He is, in my opinion, one of the best players in the world at the moment. The best player in CONCACAF at the moment. So, yeah, I'm very excited to see what he can do this coming year. Jacob Schaffelberg, 2 goals against Messi. I think that kind of speaks for itself. Felt like that was a precursor of his year ahead. Just going to be big moments for him. Alistair Johnston, nominated for the FIFA World 11. Added a good few trophies to the cabinet as well, winning the league again with Celtic. Believe he won the cup as well. Forgot to write that in my notes. 11 pages, and I forgot to write how many trophies Alistair Johnston won this year. Good job, Sam. Pat on the back for that one. But yeah, no, I know for sure he won the Scottish Premiership. But like I said, individually though, I think him being nominated for the FIFA World 11, that's so massive. I was so just surprised to see him there, and it's not unjust either. He definitely deserved to be there. Also, by the way, getting into the Copa best 11 of the tournament, the only Canadian representation that we had, which I thought was a bit harsh. I think we probably should have seen more Canadians there, but at least we had one, and it was Alistair Johnston. He definitely deserved to be there. Tajon Buchanan becomes the first Canadian to play in and win the Serie A. I kind of talked about this earlier, but yeah, I think to me that's massive for the program as a whole, and just individually, of course, for Tajon Buchanan, that's huge. And then Christine St. Clair calls it a day on the greatest career I think we're ever going to see. The international leading goal scorer for men and women. the best player that our country has ever produced, one of the greatest Canadian athletes that the country has ever produced. You could make an argument, probably, in my opinion, the greatest Canadian athlete that we have ever produced. Yeah, I will confidently say that you could say that she's one of, if not the best. But yeah, just what a career she had. Some other, and of course, I haven't mentioned it this episode because I wanted to save it for a moment of the year. The NSL officially announced Canada is getting a professional women's league, and I think it's overdue. And we'll see kind of what this league can bring. They've signed a couple of players so far. I saw a tweet as of the day of recording this. It's 100 days until the season kicks off. So I'm sure that we will see a lot more news in the coming months of what's going to happen, who's going to sign where, all that fun stuff. But yeah, just hopefully it gets the support that I think it deserves. And we'll see what happens with the league this year, and hopefully it's a very successful year for it. But yes, I saved that for this moment because I did want to talk about it. But moving now into player of the year, and I'm going to be honest, I probably could have listed like 30 different players who are Canadian that deserved to be mentioned. I will first kind of mention players I've talked about in depth about so far this episode. So I'm going to quickly fire off 4. Jacob Schaffelberg, Derek Cornelius, Moise Bombito, Liam Miller, all enjoyed great years, and for some breakout years in their own ways, showed up big for us and for their clubs. Schaffelberg, of course, in the Copa America, was one of our stars. Derek Cornelius and Moise Bombito did the bits for us defensively, and Liam Miller was reliable in the Copa as well. And then his move to Hull was looking real positive, and I still think could be. And then, of course, Bombito, Cornelius, both getting big moves, and Jacob Schaffelberg. We will see what 2025 has in store for him and all these guys. So quickly, I do want some CPL representation in here, and who better to represent than Tristan Borges. Quick mentions to Brian Wright, Alessandro Hajabopor, and Kyle Becker. But for me, it's Tristan Borges, who won the CPL Player of the Year for the second time in his career and was at the heart of Forge's success. He had a stop-start season in 2023, but 2024 came around and he had a point to prove. 8 goals, 9 assists in all competitions, and a league title to his name. He was a creative outlet all season. Even when he wasn't scoring or assisting, he found himself at the heart of all things good for Forge, in my opinion. And yeah, just such a joy to watch. I got to watch him a lot, of course, being that he's a Forge player. So I got to watch him a lot, and he just really impressed me a lot this season. This to me was his best season that I've seen him play, and that is also comparing it to the 2019 season where he was the top goal scorer, the player of the year, and the U21 player of the year where he just dominated. I think this was his best all-around play. He just looks so good, and I had to put in someone from the CPL. I do know, there's a lot of great players in the CPL, so I wanted at least one to mention. I've mentioned a lot of guys this episode because the CPL is a great league and has some great Canadian talent in there, and Tristan Borges, like I said, to me, was probably the pick of the bunch, but that's why I wanted to mention a few other guys as well in case you thought otherwise. But moving into Maxime Crepeau, huge year for him internationally. He was given that number 1 shirt, metaphorically, of course, as he wears 16. But over the summer, he looked a beast. You know what I mean? During the Copa, during the friendly that he played, he was a clutch performer and was that winner that we know he is. And it showed, stepped up every time Canada needed him, making huge, remarkable saves during the Copa run. The shootout was his crowning moment for me, in my opinion, and perfectly summed him up. When we needed him, he was there. It was a great year for Canada, and whilst Portland underperformed in the MLS, I still thought he was solid for them. He kind of fell out of favor towards the end of the season, which is kind of surprising to me, so keep an eye on that going into next year because he's such a class keeper, and it would be a shame to see him just not used at Portland, especially when Canada has such a big year ahead of us. But speaking of goalkeepers, Dane St. Clair. Basically everything I said about Maxime Crepeau can be said about Dane St. Clair at club level. He was massive for Minnesota throughout the season, really keeping their playoff hopes alive, and in the League's Cup as well. He even made a historic 16 saves to keep his team alive in that game as well. He was doing that all season, a steady presence at the back for them. In the MLS playoffs, he was one of the standout performers, in my opinion, with some massive stops and huge penalty saves. Like that shootout against Real Salt Lake where he was like calling game, pretty iconic if you ask me. Like that felt like an instant, like, damn, okay, that's sick. And then, of course, when he was called on for Canada, I thought he looked pretty good as well. 3 clean sheets in 4 matches he played in. Not bad, I mean, the fact that we get to list 2 Canadian keepers here as potential like players of the year for us, I think it just shows the quality we have in between the sticks at the moment. And it's very exciting. I'll be interested to see how Marsh manages that position coming into this year. But moving away from the goal, but not too far away from it, because this guy plays in the back line. It's, of course, Alistair Johnston. Probably the best calendar year of his career. I know he's still technically playing his season because that's how the season works. But calendar year, I thought, was a great year for him. Captain Celtic on a few occasions, won the Scottish Premiership, Scottish Cup, and the Scottish League Cup. So it looks like I did write down the note of how much he had won this year, just lower than where I needed it to be. But yeah, stepped up as well off the pitch, giving interviews when Tajon Buchanan went out hurt, and everyone was shocked and reeling mentally from that. And he kind of showed that he kind of has that captaincy kind of in him, even if he isn't wearing the captain's armband. And yeah, just such a joy, I think, to have such a quality player in the Canadian setup, because just since he's come into the team, he has been an ever-present. He really has been. Whether we need him at center back in like a 3, at wing back or a full back, he's shown that he has the makings to do all that. In my opinion, one of the best right backs in the world. You can tell me I'm being hyperbolic. You can tell me I'm exaggerating. You can tell me all that stuff. And guess what? I still think it. He is one of the best right backs in the world. And like I said, that FIFA Pro 11 nomination and the Copa team of the tournament kind of would back me on that. And yeah, just what a year it is now that he's hit 50 caps. I believe he's now technically on 51, but hit 50 caps this year as well. So absolutely massive. I love Alistair Johnston. He's such a goat, Moving into, I had to put him in here. I am biased. We all know that. Jonathan Osorio. If we're talking Canada, I have to talk about Jonathan Osorio. So I'm sorry, but I have to. One of my favorite players of all time, and a legend at country and club level, in my opinion, was officially named TFC captain in 2024, and it was well-deserved. Yes, TFC didn't have a good year at all, in my opinion. They only seemed to perform well when Osorio was in. A majority of their wins and results came when he was in the team, showing how vital he actually is to them. It shows, a lot of the positives that go through TFC go through Jonathan Osorio, showing his class as a player, his influence on the team, and like I said, him being the captain now is fully deserved. It's great to see. I think it's great for the program as well, both TFC and Canada. A guy that was, just came through the TFC Academy is now one of their most recognizable players and their highest leading appearances. I know that happened in 2023, but it just goes to show how hard he's worked, how good he's done. And of course, on the national side, as per usual, he stepped up when he was needed, fit whatever role was asked of him. If certain players weren't getting it done, weren't performing to the best that we thought they could, he was one of the first players off the bench to be called upon. And like I said, played those big games against Chile and Venezuela, played against Uruguay, got on against Argentina, of course, but started those games in the Copa America, showing that he still has quality in those legs and showing how good he is and has become. So yes, he's always getting a mention here on the Maple Footy podcast. I had to. Another midfielder here, Stefan Eustáquio. At club level, he was in and out of the lineup, but the end of the year did see his fortunes change. He ended the year strong, starting, I believe the stat was 8 of 9 or 9 of 10 or something like that of their last few games. And for Canada, he remained an ever-present, officially named vice captain of the team, and one of the first names, as always, on the team sheet if he's healthy, helping control our tempo, helping control our flow. And he's just a constant outlet, making it clear he's one of the best midfielders in CONCACAF, if you ask me, showing that he can do it in Europe as well, being successful with Porto, playing with Porto, and now potentially linked with AC Milan. We'll see what happens there. New boss at AC Milan, formerly Stefano Stacchio's manager, so that link is probably always going to be there. But we will see if it actually happens or not, and if it does, I do wish him all the best. But yeah, another great year for Stefano Stacchio. And of course, our final two. Alphonso Davies had his first trophyless year in Germany. Thank you, Harry Kane curse. No, I'm just kidding. Harry Kane also had a phenomenal season. But Davies remains, at worst, top 2 left backs in the world, if we're being honest. He starts on probably every team in the world still. He's so unique as he can play the left back position almost like a winger at times, able to carry the ball, dance around players, and create chances. We know this. It's Alphonso Davies. But this year, I think, was a year where it felt like his defense spoke for him as well, because, when you see and think of Alphonso Davies, you think of like the flair, the flashiness on the pitch, and we don't usually talk about how good he is defensively. And this year, I think he really showed that. In the Copa, he was deployed as a proper left back, which for Canada hasn't always been the case. And he played very well, in my opinion. Not the flashy Davies we know, but rather a mature defender leading by example. Much like Johnston, he was nominated for the FIFA Pro 11 and was named the captain of Canada, following in Atiba Hutchinson's footsteps. He will always be, I would say, if healthy, will always be on Canada's Player of the Year list, because he's a generational talent. The best, the second best this year in CONCACAF, the second best for Canada this year, I would say. And he's just so good. He really is. He's a quality player. And finally, Jonathan David, who has officially won the Canada Men's Player of the Year award, the second time that he's done that, nominated for the CONCACAF Player of the Year, and for the first time in his career was named Ligue 1 Player of the Month during the year. For my money, he's been one of the best strikers in the world this past year, ended it with 47 direct goal contributions. I've said it before and I'll say it again. He is so much more than a number 9 as well. He almost plays as like a 9-10 hybrid. He's all over the pitch, getting stuck in defensively and creating chances, space for his teammates. It's what he does. He's a great all-around player, not just stick him up front, let him get a poacher's goal. He can do that, but he is so much more than that. He was one of our top performers at the Copa, stepping up when Canada needed him, and did the same for Lille, both in the league and in Champions League. They're having a great Champions League run at the moment, and this was, in my opinion, his best calendar year of his career, hands down. The best player in CONCACAF this year, one of the best in the world. Just what a year it was for Mr. Jonathan David. So moving away from some positive, just for the time being, let's talk about some negatives, and let's talk about things to leave in 2024. Because, like I said, it's not all positive. So, Dronegate, Herdman, Priestman, leave it all in 2024, please. Obviously, we can't just forget that it happened, and I know investigations are still ongoing, and we'll be seeing that unfold, I would assume, throughout this calendar year. But what I'm saying is, please, never do that again. Don't do that. Don't. Why did you feel the need to do that? And one of my favorite things about Dronegate, I think, just ironically, is that they were Canada is getting investigated for using drones and whatnot, and Herman's denying any access to it, any accountability to it at all. And then there was rumors that during the Canadian Championship lead up against Forge, there was drones at the Forge practice trying to spy on them. So just we can take away some comedy from the situation, because it really isn't a funny situation. It puts the program at stake. I think it puts into question a lot of things. And yeah, like I said, just don't ever do this again. Don't let Priestman or Herman coach in Canada ever again. Let's move on from them and do the best that we can. And yeah, I know that investigations are going to continue coming out. Some great journalists brought this to everyone's attention. And I hope that they continue to tell us kind of what's happening, because I'm very curious to see where this goes. I hope that our players don't suffer from anything. But yeah, this was not a good look for the program. So let's never do that again, please. Looking on the pitch, I think poor finishing. I've been vocal about this, but there were so many games I think we could have won, or at least could have won by more, had our finishing been more clinical. We were wasteful with chances, and it seemed to haunt our national team this year. So we need players to be more clinical, especially with the attacking talent that we have. Kyle Larin, Jonathan David, Theo Bair, Tani Oluwaseyi. Those are just some striking options. And of course, you got like your Liam Millers, Jacob Schaffelberg, Tajon Buchanan, Ali Ahmed. Like we're good attacking. So it's a shame that like some of our games didn't like go our way, or weren't like more bigger wins, of just not capitalizing on certain chances. So let's work on our finishing coming into 2025, and not stopping a little bit more for MLS and CPL. Please stop league play for the big national team tournaments, please. The leagues didn't stop for Copa, and it just needs to stop. Like, it should. Club teams end up suffering because they lose big players, and I know that kind of pertains more so to the MLS than it does the CPL. We have more MLS representation than CPL representation in the national team. So you could probably say this pertains more so to the MLS. But yeah, I don't know why the league play doesn't stop, especially when such big players are away from their clubs for a month. Like Jonathan Osorio, Richie Larea, Tani Oluwaseyi, and Dane Sinclair were away from TFC in Minnesota for like 6 to 8 weeks, from friendly to end of Copa America. Like, that's not fair to the club, and that's not fair to the players either. So I know it's not really like much that like Canadian like football can do about that. But yeah, I just wanted to say it. Let's also leave Liam Miller's injury and just magically heal him, please, because I miss watching Liam Miller play. So just like, I don't know, someone like magically heal his ACL. Like, why did we have to why do injuries have to exist? And yeah, also like leave injuries just in general in 2024. Like, let's just not get injured from now on, please. But yeah, no, in all seriousness, I do hope that we don't see a whole ton of injuries this year, because as we know, injuries do suck and they do occur. So let's just hope that we don't see like a ton of injuries this year. Like, please, please, please. But let's move away from the negative and let's move back into the positives. What we need in 2025. So I think what I loved this year was the debuts that we got to see this year. We got 6 total. Tani Oluwaseyi, Afrifa, Saliba, Seeger, Poku, and Knight LaBelle all made their national team debuts, and I hope that we get around about that number, maybe more, in 2025. It would be great. More CPL challenges, whether it's when they play against the MLS clubs or players getting into the national team or players moving abroad. It only benefits the league, the players, the teams, what we're trying to build here. So yeah, just more, I kind of say that as CPL challenges, but I guess just like more like things for the CPL, I guess. Just like, yeah, like let them continue to play against MLS clubs. It only benefits them. Maybe players like CPL alum or even current CPL players getting into the national team, because we do have a good few alum that have stepped on the pitch for Canada. Most recently, of course, Kwesi Poku, but then you have other guys as well that have in the short history of the CPL. So I'd love to keep seeing that, and if moves come along for them, I would like to see guys like start leaving and go develop elsewhere, because it's great to play in the CPL. Do not get me wrong. I love the fact that we have it. But if like big moves come along, like you got to take those, you got to go. You know what I mean? So I would love to keep seeing that. Keeping with the CPL, let's keep supporting the CPL and Canadians in the MLS. Don't look down on them for playing in the CPL or MLS. They are both very good leagues, and the CPL has developed a lot of good players. The MLS has a lot of good players in it. This is more so for the people that kind of don't really respect either league. Even some guys that play in the MLS don't really respect the CPL. I mean, famously, Kosi Thompson decided to make some comments, and then of course Stefan Estacio did back the CPL. I think that's massive for the vice captain of our country to back the CPL. That's absolutely huge, I think. And yeah, I'm just kind of getting tired of people just not respecting it. That's just my opinion. But yeah, so let's be positive around the CPL. That's what I'm trying to say for this year. The CPL and the MLS, I should say, this year in 2025. And yeah, let's get more big moves for our boys. Keep our fingers crossed. Some big moves could be on the way with potentially Jonathan David, Alphonso Davies, and who knows what else. Who else could get a move? So let's hope that there's a lot of big moves in store for some of our boys. Another thing, I think, European friendlies, look at what it did for us. It elevated our levels and our players, gets their names out there, and shows us a litmus test of where our boys really stack up against some of the best. That game against the Netherlands, yeah, it was a tough one. But it showed us the work that we need to do. We go out, we work on that in between that and the France game, and then we get a hard, well-earned draw against France, and then we go into the Copas, and we once again work hard in that game, do very well. Sorry, not the game, the run itself, and it just shows when you play against top-level teams, you're gonna get the best out of your players, and it's gonna only benefit them with a Moise Bombito, with a Derek Cornelius, with a Liam Miller, Theo Bair. Look at what the Copa and these friendlies did for their careers and how they've elevated them. It's massive in my opinion, and we need to see more of that. We need at least one trophy, but preferably two. I've said this before, and I will say it again. We need one, preferably two. Gold Cup and CONCACAF Nations League are both this year, and it's time. It's time. I need to see these guys win a trophy. And on that, let's bring the A team for both the Nations League and the Gold Cup. I've said this before, but we've already qualified for the 2026 World Cup, which means that some of these windows we may not face the best of competition, all due respect, because other teams during your international windows, they'll be playing for a World Cup spot. So we need to take advantage of the windows that we get. We need our A team at the Gold Cup, because I know the past couple Gold Cups we've kind of brought, I don't want to say our B team, but we've definitely left some of our A-listers at home. I think that needs to not be the case this time around, because I think that this squad needs to play with each other as much as they can before 2026. And finally, what do we have to look forward to in 2025? More Canadian footy, of course. CPL is heading into its 7th season, which I think is massive, and I will be the first to say I wasn't sure how the league would kind of do and how successful it would be when it was first announced all those years ago. But now it's going into its 7th season, which I think is massive. It's, I think, growing. They're talking about expansion, and I think that's only good. MLS Canadians thriving. A lot of our MLS boys had great years, even if their teams didn't. So hopefully this season the teams can match our boys in terms of performance, and maybe we see a Canadian or a Canadian team lifting the MLS Cup. The NSL starting up, long overdue, as I mentioned before, hopefully is well supported after all the success that our women have brought us. It's very well deserved, and I hope nothing but the best for that league. Our boys and girls are balling in Europe. Davies, David, Chouanier, Stefan Estacio, Laren, Miller, Bair, Johnston, Bombito, Cornelius, Kone, Buchanan. The list goes on. Much more success to be had and trophies to be won. So let's hope that our guys and girls in Europe continue to make us look good over there. Some big transfers, potentially Davies and David on the move, and who else could be on the move? We don't know. Potentially Kone and Estacio. We shall wait and see. depth in Canada and hard choices. Look at the depth that we have in our squad. This feels like the first time in our history where it feels like we have very good squad depth. Guys that are getting called up, guys that aren't getting called up. Marsh made some tough calls not bringing some guys this year, and he made big choices, and those are the big choices you have to make. So I'm looking forward to Jesse Marsh continuing to make these massive choices, giving guys chances, giving guys opportunities, and just overall just like giving the best to our program, I think. And with that being said, Marsh continuing to give guys chances and opportunities. Just because, like, look at how much it benefits some of our guys. I know I've kind of beaten the horse at this point, but like I said, Derek Cornelius coming in from the cold, Bombito getting a chance, Jacob Schaffelberg, Liam Miller, all those guys, like, Jesse Marsh really gave them a chance, really trusted them, and look at what it did for them, their careers, and our team as well. And finally, what to properly look forward to, concrete dates, international windows. March are the CONCACAF Nations League finals, where we play Mexico in the semis, and then winner of that plays the winner of the States, and I believe they're playing Honduras. I could be wrong. I can't remember who the States play. I was more focused on who Canada was playing. Then, of course, you have the June, July, the Gold Cup, obviously. So hopefully we see a good result there too. September, October, and November are also all space for international friendlies, and that's where, if it is possible, I would like to see us playing some European friendlies, or even South American friendlies against top-level teams, just top-level teams. I would hope to see a couple of our friendlies be that. So hopefully that is the case. But yeah, I've talked a long time. I've talked a long time. I had lots to talk about, and there's so much more that I probably could have talked about. Like, I could have talked about more players. Like, look at the year Theo Bair and Tani Oluwaseyi he had. Some of the debutants, like Knight LaBelle, who's now scoring at will for the Crew. Some of the boys' MLS runs, like I said, Dane St. Clair, one of the best performers in the MLS run. Alphonso Davies, Jonathan David, you probably could have done a whole episode on how good they've been. Kyle Larin, I hardly mentioned him this episode. He's had a great end to the year and really finding his goal-scoring boots once again. So just so much that I could have said that could have been left on the table. Maybe you would have wanted me to talk about even more CPL, maybe more MLS, so a lot to be talked about with the national team nowadays, and it's great because the program is doing very good, and I hope that it continues to do this well over the years to come. As I've mentioned, I'm praying for a trophy this year, and I'm just very excited to see what this year could hold. So I do hope that you liked this 2024 Wrapped. I had so much fun preparing it and now recording it, so I really hope that you enjoy it. I know it's rather lengthy, but I hope that it did it for you. I really hope so. So thank you so much for listening. Regularly scheduled Maple Footy, of course, with the Prem action will still be coming your way. Football don't stop, baby. So let's keep it going. Another great year, hopefully, for our boys coming up, and we'll be supporting it. I'll be covering the boys throughout the year as I did last year, and it will hopefully be an even better year. So thank you so much for listening. I do most definitely appreciate it. And until next time, cheers, everyone.
And that was your Maple Footy podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Check my socials for any and all future updates at Official Sam Little on Instagram, where I am most active. And until next time, live, laugh, little.